Hey, good morning again. So this should be the second video that you're watching for me, and we are going to focus in this video on our snapshot writing. So I wanted to show you an example, a couple examples actually from yesterday. And I'm going to try to make this to where you can see it. See, I'll just move things around. Um, doo, 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 doo. Aha, I can move me. Perfect. Okay, so yesterday in class with my last period, I wound up making this example with them. And I want to kind of tweak it just a bit with you guys and show you one other example for this story. Now, remember, a snapshot is just one setting. It uses my sensory details to come up with answers and to come up with your snapshot. That's what I really mean by that. So what we did yesterday in class was we took this graphic organizer. So what do you see? What do you smell? What do you feel? What do you hear? What do you taste? And we tried to fill that out for each snapshot. It does not have to be anything difficult to jot down. I would encourage you doing this on every snapshot. And you can do it multiple ways. For us, we just did just as quick as this. So see, hear, feel, smell, and taste. I think we can all agree that normally taste is something that's not given as much. But this is what we did for each snapshot that we were doing an example for. And this is definitely what I would encourage you to do, is to just jot these down. And then for your snapshot, fill out what are the things that I see, what are the things I hear. Now, the one thing that we ran into yesterday in class a lot was that people were just assuming things like, let me go back to this example. So in this example, people were trying to say there's dead bodies inside. Well, I don't know that there's dead bodies inside, so I really can't use that in my piece. What I do know is that there's an air conditioner. What I do know is that there's old paint and that there's vines surrounding it, that there's a chimney. The windows, some of them seem broken. I know that I could potentially hear the broken air conditioner. I could hear the wind rustling. A lot of people made the inference that because this tree here looks like it has no leaves, or at least the leaves are falling off, that maybe it's fall. So they could hear the wind blowing, they could hear leaves crunching under them. So those are examples. So we made this example in class. I was running as fast as I could away from them. I looked behind me to make sure no one was following me. And that's when I felt a spine-chilling coldness run up my arms. Now, I just want to stop because I had to introduce this some way. I don't, like in each class, it changed how we introduced it. It doesn't have to be anything complex. You don't have to give me paragraph upon paragraph about how you got to this house. It's just mainly to introduce it. So mine, I just decided to make it like I was running away from somebody. It worked. And in class it worked, I think. So anyway, that's why that's there. Do I know who him is or them are? No, I've no really clue. I'm just kind of going with it. So then I stopped dead in my tracks and looked up. When I looked up, I saw an abandoned, broken down house with smoke rising from the brick chimney. So again, I'm using things that I was seeing. They had mentioned in class they saw a broken down house. They saw smoke rising from the chimney, and it was a chimney. So those are three things that I was able to include in that sentence. And I didn't just see, or I didn't just say, sorry, it's too early. I didn't say like I saw a house, I saw a chimney, I saw some smoke. So I tried to embed it all in one sentence. Again, it's using that sentence variety like we were talking about in our last video. Also, I think it's to note here that right here, this word when, that's one of your subordinating conjunctions. So when I looked up, comma, there should actually be a comma there. That's a dependent clause. For fun, I'm going to show you actually what I want you to do today. So I'm actually going to have you highlight your independent and dependent clauses. My little highlighter's not easily accessible, so I'm just going to do this. So independent and my dependent. I said that wrong. I'm sorry. I just keep you all on your toes. That's what we're going to go with. So when I looked up, that's my dependent clause because I have the word when, which is a subordinated conjunction. The rest is my independent. I saw, who saw, I did. So I have a subject and I have a verb. Anyway, as we were going on, as I became more curious than scared, so I decided to use the feels there. What was I feeling? So I became curious, because who wouldn't be a little curious? I inched closer to the house. As I did, the door creaked open and leaves poured out on the ground. Also, dependent clause, as I did. The door opened and the leaves poured on the ground. So that is my independent clause. I crunched the leaves as I crept towards the house. I felt like I was being called towards it. I placed my hand up to the door and pushed it open. So I think too that I should have provided a little bit more sentence variety, especially at the end and maybe at the beginning. So I'm going to make that edit here. I crunched the leaves as I crept towards the house. I felt like I was being called towards it. So I'm going to add something here. Let's see, what should I add? Maybe after I reached the door. There we go. So now I have a dependent clause because I'm using my subordinator. And then this is my independent. I placed my hand up to the door knob and pushed it open. So again, one of the reason that we use these independent versus dependent clauses is to just make our sentences more interesting. We want to try to provide an interesting paragraph or paper for whoever the reader is. So I want to show you an example from yesterday. This is a student example that I just was, as I was flipping through this morning, this is one that I saw. My friends and I love thrills. So this is based off of yesterday's picture. And the feeling of butterflies floating in our stomachs. While walking through the damp woods, ooh, dependent clause, I'm going to highlight that because I've got my subordinator. The clouds moved over the sun, guarding it from the earth. So I've got independent. It was dark, but the air was fresh and smelled, I don't think smelled, of plants and greenery. The noise of our footsteps traveling along the dirt path was the only thing that filled our ears. In the distance, there seemed to be a slight fog covering over something I could only see made out of brick. The vines and trees covered the stone area. As we approached closer, look, there's a dependent clause, as we approached closer. You can honestly identify your dependent clauses by looking for your subordinators. We were still. The bricks were a building of some sort of old church. That's my independent clause. Vines were tangled around every section of the building. However, a sort of cross statue that almost resembled a gravestone was placed in front of us. The building was very old and very obviously overgrown, along with the strange statue. The feeling of butterflies and nervousness filled my stomach. This time, though, it felt different. This place was cold and dark. How the fog seemed to only lay around the building, and how the clouds seemed to only cover up the sun when we approached this mysterious place. I tasted a small hint of blood, noticing that out of the nervous habit I was biting my tongue. A shiver was sent down my spine, and the feeling of death was right around the corner. I like it. I think it was very ominous. I think they used all of their senses. So that's what you want to try to do, is to try to identify all the different types of senses that you can, your sensory details. So what did I taste? What did I feel? What did I hear? What did I smell? What did I feel? The feeling one is definitely one of the most important, like where he's talking about the feeling of butterflies and nervousness, that it was cold and dark, that the feeling of death was right around the corner. Love all of that. So today your task is to use this example. So you are going to use this one, and I'm going to post this as a picture too, just so you can see it. And you are going to come up with a snapshot for this, paying close attention to independent and dependent clauses. So what I'd like for you to do is, while you are writing it, is to identify my dependent and independent clauses. I don't care what color you highlight in. I chose blue and green if you'll just make sure it's easy to read. So like in your example, so if I'm writing my example here, and I had this one right here. So as we approach closer, I'm just going to highlight that in yellow. and then I'm going to highlight my independent, and we'll go blue. Now, what I'd like for you to do, though, is so that way I know which is which, is make a key for me at the bottom. So I'm putting my dependent in yellow, and I'm putting my independent in blue. Now, I'm sure one question I'll get is, how many times would you like me using these? I think you need to use them multiple times in your piece. I would try at least three times in your snapshot today to use an independent and dependent clause. Now, remember that you make your dependent clause by using a subordinating conjunction. So again, I even printed out a list for this time. You can find this online. It's just examples here, after, before, etc. So find your subordinating conjunctions. If you want to go back to your question and use those, feel free. But again, you're making sure that in your snapshot today, you are using independent and dependent clauses. Try to use all your senses, and we're trying to make this one today better than yesterday's. So after looking at some of these examples, and I'm actually going to put up 2 other examples here, and I'm just going to leave it here for a second so you can pause if you wanted to and read. And again, I can automatically see here is an example of independent and dependent clauses. The more independent and dependent clauses you have, normally the more interesting and better your piece is. So hopefully today you can use your independent and dependent clauses in your snapshot. You can identify them like we did here. And then you can make sure that you're using all your sensory details. If you have any questions, email me. You can always set up a Google Meet with me during the day if you needed to, especially like 10:45. I'm here if you need me. But again, just make sure you create that snapshot, submit it, and identify your independent, dependent clauses. And I will see you tomorrow, Group B, and virtual. I'll, continue seeing you like this. See you later, guys.